Hey there, I'm Sarah Porritt, and you are tuning in to the Hear Us Roar podcast. Join me for inspired conversations with Asian women chatting about how ideas and passions can ignite truly transformative journeys. On today's episode, you'll learn how Nitika Chopra took fate in her own hands by creating an online lifestyle magazine that helped her land her dream talk show. Nitika is also a QVC beauty expert and the founder of Chronicon, a platform and conference dedicated to elevating the lives of those living with chronic illness. I first met Nitika in the fall of 2018 at Well Summit, a jam-packed weekend event at a warehouse in Brooklyn focused on exploring the various facets of health and wellness. While Nitika beamed with confidence at her session called Real Self-Love, Raw and Uninstagrammable, it was immediately obvious that she had done a lot of soul-searching.
So I was diagnosed with psoriasis at the age of 10 and psoriatic arthritis at the age of 19. And I went through about like a 17-year period where it was just really traumatizing physically and emotionally. I believe that we have this moment-to-moment choice in those experiences. And so for me, I think after a while, it became really clear that the choice was I could either get swallowed up by my suffering, and then the other choice was to do the internal work.
You can probably guess which path Nitika chose to traverse. She ceases to amaze me with all the ways that she continues to reinvent herself and her platform in service of her community of chronic illness warriors. In 2019, Nitika's sold-out Chronicon conference hosted speakers like style icon Stacey London and actress Jennifer Esposito, while garnering thousands of live streams. Before we learn more about that, let's start at the beginning of Nitika's story.
So I was born in Ohio, and then we moved to Cairo, and then we moved to Singapore. And then I moved back to Ohio, and I lived there from like first grade to eighth grade. And then in high school, for those 4 years, I was in New Jersey. And when I graduated high school, my parents moved to India for a year. And then they moved to Hong Kong for 10 years.
Oh,
and I have lived in New York City for about 19 years now. You know, when I moved to Ohio, I just remember feeling other than everybody. You know, I was around a lot of Caucasian people that looked the same, and I was teased a lot as a kid. Like, my childhood was not an easy one, for sure, because I was kind of getting it from all sides. And I got psoriasis, as I said, when I was 10. So it's like I ended up really getting bullied a lot for that, because it was such a visible condition. And then also feeling like my body was sort of turning on me at the same time. So there's like a lot of internal struggle, but it was also met with a lot of external stuff that was going on around me. I don't even remember there being any other Indian or Black kids in my elementary school, except for my brother. I had a lot of Indian friends that were going to like private schools, and so we would see those on the weekends. But in terms of like the friends that lived right around me, like the best friends that I had, you know, the closest girlfriends, they were all white girls. I didn't have any close Indian friends in that way that went to school with me.
Did that make you feel closer or further away from your culture?
I think it made me want to be as far away from my culture as possible.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel that way now at all. I like love being Indian, and I love all things about my culture now. But as a kid, I wanted my name to be Tiffany, and I wanted blonde hair and blue eyes. And I didn't even realize that, like, how strange that kind of is until I got older. But yeah, I did not. I mean, and I remember friends coming over and like complaining that it smelled of curry, and like it was just, now it's like so beautifully Indian and so wonderful. But at the time, it was just different, and it just wasn't cool. And if it's not cool, like, you just don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right. And also if mainstream culture doesn't paint it as cool, or doesn't showcase beauty in that way, I can imagine that it's hard for someone who's also in a very homogenous situation to feel that their differences are beautiful, right?
Yeah, I never saw. I mean, I remember seeing like Jasmine, who's not Indian, but she's close. She's brown. So I was like, oh my God, that's me. Which so like every brown person probably felt that way, in Aladdin or whatever. But yeah, other than that, like I don't really remember seeing. And she was a cartoon. Right? But I don't really remember seeing anything like that I could relate to. Mm-hmm. When I got a little older in high school and stuff, there was a little bit more of that, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and like stuff like that. But that's a black family. It's not an Indian family. Right. Still to this day, I mean, it's very rare that you see an Indian family.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Let's change that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's change it.
Totally.
Having been diagnosed with psoriasis and living with the symptoms too probably added another layer of complexity to how you feel about yourself and how you interact with culture and the outside world. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so psoriasis is an autoimmune condition. Psoriatic arthritis is too. Psoriasis sort of shows up like thick, scaly patches of skin on your skin. And it can show up like, for some people, it just shows up in their scalp or behind their ears or maybe on a joint or something like that. But for me, I ended up having it from the tip of my foot to the tip of my head. So It was really serious and severe. And then the psoriatic arthritis ended up affecting my joints, like from my feet to my wrists to my fingers and my knees. It really just took over. I would say my quality of life was really impacted because when you have a chronic illness and a chronic condition, psoriasis is very visual and it's also very persistent. It itches like chicken pox and it doesn't let up. And so it can be really, challenging from that perspective. So for me, I would be itching all day and to the point where I would like bleed through my clothes or bleed through my sheets in the middle of the night.
Holy crap. I didn't realize that it can get that severe.
Yeah. It's like a scab. It's like your whole body is covered in scabs.
Ouch.
So it was really hard. And then, just like any kind of intimacy. And that doesn't even mean like romantic. It's just like going over to a friend's place and like wanting to be free and just like hang out and play with their toys or, have a sleepover or sit on their dark leather couch or whatever. My psoriasis would flake everywhere and it was really embarrassing and it was really people didn't understand what it was and what the deal was with it. So it was really alarming for people. So getting close to someone was really hard.
I can only imagine what it was like to live a day in Nitika's skin at such a young age, and having to work through the challenges of intimacy while trying to understand what was happening to her own body. Life is confusing enough at that age. As hard as it was, Nitika channeled her deep empathy and knack for connection towards more creative pursuits.
I started with an online magazine called Bella Life, and I really started that because I wanted my own talk show, and I just really believed that I'd always loved performing as a kid, and I really believed that I was meant to sort of help people with whatever it was that they were going through, and that doing so on camera was like the best use of my skill set. And so I worked hard and was like, I don't have any money. I don't have any connections. Like, no one knows who I am. And at the same time, I really believed that I meant to do this. But yeah, I was terrified. I had not even half a reason in my life that showed me that I should be doing what I was doing or that anyone would ever hire me to do anything. And so, I decided to create an online magazine thinking that, no one has to pay me to like do my own website, essentially. And I thought the idea was that I would have contributors, like you'd have guests, and I would have video so you could see what I look like on camera. And I would also have content that would be like related to what I would want to talk about on a show. And everyone thought I was insane and just like, what are you doing? I had just gotten divorced. I didn't have any money. Like, people were just like, you're such a weirdo. Like, what are you even thinking? But I just was convicted and felt like I needed to do it. And then 3 years later, I got a call to get a show. And it was a show on global television. And they said that they saw my website and that it was exactly the show that they were casting for.
What was that feeling like when you heard that?
It was like, you're kidding, right? Like it was an out-of-body experience.
Because that was exactly what you were hoping for, basically.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. And the show was called Naturally Beautiful, and my online magazine was called Bella Life, which Bella means beautiful. So it was a very surreal experience, but I think a lot of people, who have achieved things will say that it was also one of those moments where it's also like completely understandable. It's like, oh yeah, like this is what I asked for. This is what I've been working for.
And not to mention, you've also hosted over 50 events, have built a lot of successful brand partnerships, and you are a QVC beauty expert. I'm just curious how this journey of sharing and caring has kind of evolved and grown as you've continued down the path. And how do you find the right paths to follow as you're continuing to follow your heart?
I mean, I think for me, I really thought that the talk show was going to be the end-all, be-all. I got a show like 3 years into me starting my journey, which is pretty quick considering how long I've been on my journey now. And it was really wonderful because it was a catalyst and led me to other things. Like soon after that, I met the founder of the skincare company Fresh on my show, and he hired me to do his QVC. And it was just like a snowball of all these different things. But what I will say is that there's something internal, for me at least, that has to line up with everything that I'm doing. So as much as I was like on TV and, that's really glamorous and fun, and it was, I always need it to mean something bigger than just that medium. And I always need it to be of service. And so for me, I think it's like when I'm going after things, there came a point with my career when I did the show and then I did QVC and then I was doing all these different brand deals. They were great, but they stopped really providing the kind of service that I wanted them to. I had been talking about self-love and beauty as an access point to self-love, which obviously is really important and valuable. But it wasn't the depth and the truth that I knew I could go to. And so I think that's sort of the inner compass that you need to be listening to as you go through your journey. So like follow the things that spark and the things that light you up. But if you constantly reevaluate, am I being of service in the most way that I can, in the way that I can, in the most, effective way? And the answer is no, or like, no, I could be doing more. It's not completely aligned or whatever. You need to keep going until you figure out what that thing is. And that doesn't mean that you have to stop everything or quit things. But I think there was a time for me where I had to sort of take all the pieces that were lining up and say, like, there's more here and I need to reevaluate.
From that spot where you realize you weren't providing as much service as you'd like, how did you troubleshoot? Well, where do I go next? How do I provide more value? How do I live more true to what it is that I'm trying to do?
Yeah, it was a long journey. In 2016 with the election, actually, it was very volatile, and I had been doing these brand partnerships and these beauty things. And I had been trying to, after Fresh discontinued their products on QVC, I'd been trying to get the next beauty deal, and that was easy for me. Like I could kind of do that in my sleep at that point. And I kept getting no's. And I was like, I listen when I get the no. It hurts and it sucks and it's like brutal. But I also really do believe it's redirection or it's protection of some sort. And so I really listened when I started to get more and more no's, because I would ask for feedback and I would ask for people to tell me, like, did I do something wrong? Did I maybe am I not doing the content that you want? Or is my engagement affecting this or something, And I never got negative feedback from brands. It was always like they internally were taking a turn, or like they cut this certain budget or something. And so it really pushed me because I was struggling. I was like, I had been flying high, and then all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, like I just got so many no's and I don't know where I'm going to like get my next paycheck from. And so that pushed me to start asking the question of, what do I really want to be talking about? What do I really want to be doing? Because I knew that I could talk about beauty and self-love, but I knew that it wasn't working. And so I think it's a combination of like the universe showing you things and then you also taking that even, a small nod from the universe and sort of going deeper with things. And what I did that next year in 2017 was I sort of took my foot off the gas for a little bit and I got like a consulting job at like a marketing company.
Oh, wow. That is so different than what you're doing.
Totally so different. But I needed a job, and I needed that stability. And I kind of got to this place where I was like, I want my dreams more than anything, but I need to be alive to be able to fulfill them. And I'm not going to stress myself out to the point of like being strung out, and not surviving because I was trying so hard to follow my dreams. And I really believe in taking your foot off the gas in order to make things go faster, actually. You kind of have to slow down a little bit. So I did that for that year because I wanted to give myself the freedom to sort of figure out what it was that I was really meant to be doing, because I knew that the beauty thing was sort of not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I ended up just taking the year and kind of exploring with it. So like every time I would meet someone, I would sort of figure out like, oh, what do I feel like telling this person that I really like to do? Or when they ask me, what do I do? What do I want to say? Or, when do I light up the most? And actually, I spoke at, I think it was Well Summit. I'm not sure if it was the time that you saw me or what, but it was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big turning point for me because it was a talk about self-love, raw and real Instagrammable, like non-Instagrammable self-love. And I love talking about that stuff, but I had made the decision to talk about my health more in that talk than I had ever really done. And it was because I was going through this turning point and I was trying to figure it out. At the end of that talk, I had maybe about 8 people ask me questions.
And one stalk you and reach out to you years later.
Oh my God, so sweet. I appreciate the stalking. It's totally fine. But yeah, I had about 8 people ask me questions, and I remember there were like 2 girls there that just asked me like straight self-love questions, right? And they were totally fine, and I think I was able to help them. But the other 6 women all happened to have a chronic condition of some sort, whether it was diabetes or cancer or, lupus. It was like one thing after another. And when I answered their questions, my entire body felt it.
And then you came upon your baby. You concepted it, Chronicon.
She was my baby.
How did that all come about?
It was a series of things, I believe, starting really with that Well Summit talk and that year of just declaring certain things. And then the next year, I decided to do these chronic self-love media and influencer dinners. And that was really just so enjoyable for me. And the stakes were not like crazy high. I used to do these self-love celebrations, which were like 200 guests and 25 brands and all this stuff. But they were really intense when I did them, and I did them all by myself and usually for like a budget of $5,000 or less.
Oof,
so it was
I don't know how you stretched that.
I don't know how I did either. But, I did. And it really, I loved that I did that. I loved doing them, but it took a lot out of me. And so when I decided that I wanted to talk more about chronic illness, I was like, okay, and I love doing these events. So I sort of thought about different ways to do that. And the Chronic Self-Love Media and Influencer Dinners were great because I partnered with a great brand and they didn't take a ton of production or cost up front. But then later that year, this was in 2018, I was at another conference and I just got this sense that the people that were at this conference were being revered for being exactly how they were and for being like don't change a single thing about you, like that kind of vibe. And all the brands and all the people that were showing up were just like, we love you and think you're the best exactly how you are. Please don't change. And I was walking around. It was actually Chronicon is where I was. And so it was a room full of plus size, beautiful humans. And I was walking around and I was like, wow, like what would it be like for someone with a chronic illness to feel this way? So I think there was just this huge epiphany that opened up for me where I was like, wow, I have never really seen something like this for people who have chronic illnesses. Is there something like this for, so it was like this conversation with myself and with God. And I remember having the thought, what would it be called? And I was walking around the room and I thought, Chronicon? And I got scared. Honestly.
So you came up with that idea on the spot?
On the spot. I didn't know the full spectrum of it, but yes, as I was walking around this event, I felt it. I was
love the
called.
conviction. Yeah, you were called.
I was called, and I feel it very clearly that I was called. I was like, that is a humongous idea. I am one person. I have no funding. Like, where do you expect me to do this idea? Like, that's really cute, but what the hell? Why would you give me this huge idea and not give me any resources to like execute it? This is how I talk to God. And so I sat with it for like a few months and I didn't tell a single person. And then finally I started to talk to like few trusted people. And long story short, I ended up starting to create it at the beginning of the year. And the whole time I was like, okay, God, if you want me to do this, which I really feel in my whole body that you do, you got to show up. Like, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm not doing this alone. How are you going to help me? Like, just really going head to head with God every day about it. And he did. He really showed up and really had people come in that helped me birth it in a way that I could have never done on my own, which is exactly what I needed.
And how did they end up coming into your life? Because I can imagine that like something of this scale, working with celebrities like Stacey London, putting together an entire day of panels and workshops, that is no small feat. I'm not surprised that you were scared.
Yeah, well, Stacey's one of my best friends, so I wasn't scared of her.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, she's sweetie pie. But I was scared because, doing my self-love celebrations, I had done a lot of production on my own before. And my whole motto with doing those events was keep it simple, sweetie. Like, people say keep it simple, stupid. I changed it to keep it simple, sweetie. Because I didn't have the resources to make it complicated, right? So you add anything and it's like another $1,000, another $5,000, whatever. And I didn't have the money. So I had to do events. Sometimes I'd spend $2,500 and there'd be 200 people there. So I knew, because I was able to do that, because I did events that were like from 7 to 10 p.m. I chose like off days that I knew my people would come, but like maybe the venue wouldn't be that booked, things like that. But with a conference, I was like, I'm going to need a load-in day just to set the damn thing up. And then I'm going to need the event space for the entire day, not for a 3-hour period where I can go in and out real quick. So how did they come in? I asked and asked and asked and asked. And I think I had one partner in particular that came in last year, and I ended up asking them, and initially they said no.
Okay.
And I asked them for the full Monty, like what I really wanted. And then I went back again and I was like, okay, can you just do this one part? I just need help paying for the venue. Like that was like literally, I was just like, I'm a hustler. Like I can't help.
Well, you're also not taking these no's.
Definitely not.
You're not giving up on these.
No, I wasn't going to give up on the people. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I think that's a big distinction. Like when it's not just about me, my fight is real.
And Nitika continues to fight the good fight. Despite the impact of COVID to physical events, she hosted a virtual gathering this past November dedicated to mental health and continuing to build her community on Chronicon.co. As someone who is no stranger to aligning to her personal truth, I asked Nitika if she had any guidance or recommendations for my listeners who may also be living with chronic illness or want to get into the health and wellness space.
one of the biggest things that really helped me when I started Bella Life was I decided that I had this rule where I said I wasn't allowed to buy the accessories for my dream until I put in the time. And the reason why I said that was because I'm a very creative person. And so I kept finding myself every 6 months or whatever it was, thinking of a new dream and thinking of a new website or this or that. And then I would be so defeated when I'd have to tell everybody around me oh no, we're going to close that, or no, we're not doing that, or I didn't follow through. And so when I started Bella Life, I really wanted it to stick. I felt like it was going to stick. But I said to myself, you're not allowed to spend $1 on this dream for the first year. And the way that showed up was I would walk around and I would have conversations with people about what I was building. I would start getting my list of contributors and focus on getting content. I would walk around. I remember I would walk around Soho and write down ideas for articles because that's free. And I don't have to spend any money to write something, right? And so I really allowed my mind to play and to explore and to, just kind of wander in this really, really expansive way that I think when you try to jump right into making it a business, that play is not always accessible. And sometimes now that I've been doing my business for so long, I have to remind myself to go back to that play. I feel like that's what I'm doing on my sabbatical right now. I'm just writing lists and pinning things on Instagram and but with no agenda. And I think it's important to go back to that. So if you want to start something in the chronic illness conversation, I think it's like with any conversation, getting to the heart of why you want to do it and focusing on being of service first is always key. But in that, also allowing yourself to sort of play and explore and not be so quick to put yourself in a box.
I love that because I don't know if you've heard of The Little Prince, the book.
I have. Not in a long time, but yes, I have.
But I really do feel like as adults, we lose that sense of play. And then even if we are purpose-driven, what we're doing is just not as much fun unless we're being creative about it and being imaginative. So as a self-love expert, give me one way that I can be thoughtful in how I love myself.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is going to your body as your biggest teacher. I think it's really easy to be cerebral in these times and to get away with just moving past what our body is feeling and telling us. But our body is constantly talking to us. And I think I've learned that more and more as I've gotten older. And so that means when you meet new people, how do you feel in your body? When you notice you're feeling anxious, where is that coming up in your body so that next time you're feeling that, maybe even if you're really busy, you recognize it. So just really learning what the signs are in your body will change your life.
And I will just say I love your Instagram.
Oh, thanks.
I feel like your posts are always so timely just because you say things that I feel like I need to hear in the moment that I hear them. So for those of us who aren't following you, how can my listeners find you online?
Sure, yeah. So I'm at Nitika Chopra. That's Nitika, not Nikita, which everybody thinks. So yeah, at Nitika Chopra is my Instagram, and Chronicon is also tagged in, their Instagram is also tagged in my bio, so you can follow at Chronicon Official. And the Point of Pain podcast is streaming everywhere.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nitika.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Absolutely. And thank you for tuning in to the Hear Us Roar podcast. If you connected with Nitika's journey, please comment and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, pop over to www.hurpodcast.com so that you can stay up to date on all the latest episodes. It's a great way for us to keep in touch so that I can continue to encourage you to see your passions blossom. I'm your host, Sarah Porritt, and until next time.